Hi, I'm Douglas Ferguson. Welcome to the Facilitation Lab podcast, where I speak with Voltage Control certification alumni and other facilitation experts about the remarkable impact they're making. We embrace a method-agnostic approach so you can enjoy a wide range of topics and perspectives as we examine all the nuances of enabling meaningful group experiences. This series is dedicated to helping you navigate the realities of facilitating collaboration, ensuring every session you lead becomes truly transformative. Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to join us for a live session sometime, you can join our Facilitation Lab community. It's an ideal space to apply what you learn in the podcast in real time with peers. Sign up today at voltagecontrol.com/facilitation-lab. And if you'd like to learn more about our 12-week facilitation certification program, you can read about it at voltagecontrol.com. Today, I'm with Bahaa Chmait at Joy Mob Events and BahaaChmait.com, where he's on a mission to end loneliness, one shared experience at a time. He's also a 2024 TEDx speaker, workshop facilitator, and vibe maker. Welcome to the show, Bahaa.
Hey, thank you for having me, Douglas. Always good to see you.
You as well. And we'll get back to Vibe Maker. But before we do, let's hear a little bit about you getting your start. I believe you brought it back to the Lebanese family gatherings. Can you paint us a picture of one moment that really stuck out to you as you reflect on some of those origins?
There's the dinners, food, gathering, breaking bread together. I think that's the biggest thing. Every time I think about the origins of my facilitation career and where I'm at today and gathering people and creating a vibe, it all started around food. Lebanese people just love to gather. And of course, every family has their traditional dish that they bring when everyone gathers. And so everyone pulls you aside. They usually grab your wrist and they don't let you go. And they say, but you like mine the best, right? And it always just brings me joy to think of those moments.
You know, it's funny. I just saw the premiere of a new McConaughey film called The Rivals of the Amziah King. And interesting film. He is a mandolin player, beekeeper, quite an interesting fella. But when the producer came out, he dedicated the film to anybody who's ever been to a potluck. And there's an amazing scene where they're at the potluck and McConaughey's telling this young lady about all the dishes and the heritage of, you might not want to eat this one. And this is like, this one always comes from Billy, and he's telling her all about Billy. And so there's this like connection to the food and the people who made it and their personalities. And so you're bringing me back to that moment of, I can certainly remember some potlucks growing up.
Yeah, there's something about breaking bread and just sharing time and space together. So this is the oldest time, right? There's some potlucks that I'll host, and instead of having like a curated meal, we just like bring a dish, bring some utensils, bring a dish, and let's share. Let's break bread together. There's something beautiful about that.
Yeah, and especially in community, you were talking about relatives pulling you aside and saying, hey, you like mine the best, right? There's like this kind of identity around like what they brought, and maybe Aunt Edna always brings the country ham biscuits, or I'm sure the Lebanese dishes are a little different, but it's kind of that idea of like this connection to, I'm bringing this sustenance. It's also something I really enjoy making that I can provide and be excited about and proud of.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the heritage of, that recipe gets passed down through the generation. I think it kind of gets lost now, but some of the old world, ways of doing things. So, and then they put their twist on it maybe a little bit too. And they're like, but you like my version better, even though it's the same dish, And as a kid, you feel this social pressure to be like, yes, yours is the best. But at the same time, you're just like, I'm just here to enjoy some really delicious food with some wonderful people.
Yeah, and brings me back to your quest to address loneliness. When I think of community where folks are gathering a lot, specifically around food and heritage, you would imagine maybe loneliness wouldn't be such a problem there, but it could also shine a big light on it. Like if you juxtapose those moments that maybe aren't happening all day, every day, those are special moments, maybe once a week or I don't know how frequent, but it could even put a highlight on loneliness that's there. Or if you're seeing it in others, it might make it more obvious because maybe they don't have those experiences because they don't have those opportunities together. I'm kind of curious, Does any of that resonate with you, or did that lead to any of your discoveries and wanting to help others that were experiencing loneliness?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. I think that, um, loneliness you can be surrounded by a sea of people and still be lonely. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was growing up, I grew up in a small rural town in Canada. And no doubt about it, it was a small place, 500 people. And, I've had this first generation Lebanese Canadian family comes to this rural town and everything was different. My lunches were different. Had Lebanese and kefta. Have you had Lebanese food before,
I
Douglas?
love it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's delicious, right? But when you're a kid, you just want to fit in. And so they had peanut butter and jam sandwiches. They had
And juice
Lunchables.
boxes.
Yeah, the good stuff, right? I mean, a charcuterie board for kids, those Lunchables were, I mean, come on now, it was delicious. But of course, I wanted to fit in, right? And so I was kind of the exotic kid, had a unibrow. Even my name was Baha, and so as an adult, everyone's like, Baha, that's amazing. Lebanese food, that's awesome. But when you're a kid, everyone's like, Baha, ha, ha, ha. So that disconnection was challenging, And my parents wanted to describe the old world beliefs, traditions, values, and I'm trying to fit in. And so, like, where do you belong? Where's your community? Who's your tribe? And so that lack of belonging led to that loneliness that we're talking about right now. And it can be isolating, trying to figure out where you belong. I sometimes talk to kids who are not just first generation kids, but kids who have parents from different races or heritages. And so both tribes don't fully accept them, they say, and they're kind of stuck in this no man's land. And that's a pretty isolating place to be. I'm sure some of your listeners
Yeah.
have probably connected with that before.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious, when you're working with this kind of eradicating loneliness, how are you confronting that? Is it through these conversations you're having with folks, or yes, and like, are there other things that you're doing? Like, how does that show up for you?
I think the main thing is designing experiences. As an experience designer, I can tap into that isolating feeling. We've all been to a mingling thing or a networking thing, and we just kind of didn't form a circle at some point in that mingling thing. It's hard to break into that circle and connect. And so you're kind of just left off to the side. And so my goal when I'm facilitating with groups and public gatherings or team gatherings is how do we create connection before content? So before we just jump into the event, people came for the event because they want to see the event, but they come back because they connected with people. They met people that they connected with. And so facilitating like an icebreaker, an ice melter, whatever you want to call it, allows people the opportunity to come out of their shells a little bit, especially if you give them a safe and vulnerable environment to do it in. And then they get choose their own adventure. I think that's the biggest thing is not forcing anything. Forced fun is never fun. You know what I mean? Trust falls are
Yeah.
kind of lame, and team building can sometimes feel like going to the dentist. Necessary, but you don't exactly want to do it. So how can we make it more engaging and fun and playful for people and just meet them where they're at?
What's something recent that you've done that you can kind of point to that might draw a more, realistic picture for folks?
I do a lot of movement-based practice as well. And sometimes they're flash mobs, sometimes they're public sing-alongs on trains. With the flash mobs, I worked with a global hotel chain, an executive leadership team of a global hotel chain. And dancing in front of your colleagues can be vulnerable. They wanted to produce a flash mob for their 40th anniversary of the hotel. So we first gave them a tutorial video that they could practice in the comfort of their own home. And I tell this story in my TED talk, but one thing that I left out in the talk was that one of the leaders came up to me afterwards and said, hey, I was practicing at home in my spare time in one of my spare rooms. And my daughter walked by and saw me practicing the dance moves at the tutorial video. And she started joining me. And they started having this bonding experience where they were dancing together and connecting. And it was this beautiful story of how by intentionally creating something like a tutorial video so that they don't feel vulnerable and unsafe in front of everyone, they could kind of build that courage first at home. They got a chance to bond, and it had ripple effects beyond the workplace, beyond this thing that they were initially doing, to kind of connect with family. And there was this beautiful sort of intergenerational father-daughter moment that may have not happened otherwise if it wasn't for intentional design. And I think it was really beautiful. It was a really beautiful story to share. Those little moments I hear in every experience that we design. There's always a little nugget or takeaway from something that I've designed. And I think that's what's really rewarding for me and really just spreads joy in the world.
Yeah, that's super fun and cool. And I guess what other ways are you seeing joy kind of appear these days? Because I think that it's really easy to get caught up in the rhetoric of the times and the divisiveness and stuff. And so, how are you seeing these opportunities for joy?
I think being intentional, Priya Parker says it best, purpose is your bouncer. Just being purposeful with your day, with your interactions with people. I'd say that connection moves at the speed of vulnerability. And have you ever been to anywhere where there's a dance floor? So a wedding, a bar, anything like that, and you saw that no one was dancing? Have you ever had that happen? Yeah. And why is no one dancing? Because no one's dancing, right? No one wants to be the first one on that dance floor. It's scary. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of courage and bravery. Because what if no one joins you? If everyone joins you, it's a party. And so no one goes on the dance floor because no one goes on the dance floor. And it's the same thing with human connection. Whether you're trying to bridge a connection and reach out to somebody that you know or don't know, or you're trying to even apologize. If nobody goes first, then nothing happens, right? And you can only control what you do, not what other people do or how they react. And so finding that courage and that bravery to get out on that dance floor or reach out to that friend and say hi, or reach out to that colleague, that work teammate and say, hey, there's some friction between us. Can we talk about how to resolve this? It can be incredibly scary and incredibly hard, but so powerful because connection, it moves at the speed of vulnerability. And so, I just invite everybody to take that step and be brave and see what happens. The worst that can happen is you're at where you're at.
Yeah, true. And what are some of your go-to mechanisms to get the first person out on the dance floor? I mean, are you modeling that? Is that something you're doing, getting out there first? Is it about inviting more people in so that they're more encouraged and feel invited versus just getting brought to the event versus getting invited on the dance floor? I mean, I don't know. I'm just going to throw in some things out, but I'm curious, what have you found to be the mechanisms to really get people to engage?
Yeah. I would say that always looking at things in terms of team, in terms of collaboration, in terms of group, when you're thinking in terms of group. So if I'm facilitating something where I want somebody to be vulnerable, whether it's a debrief in the team and group sharing, or it's getting out on the dance floor after a talk that I've given, which we did. We threw a dance party for 500 people after the TEDx talk that I gave because it was all about dance and movement, primed everybody to just be playful and give themselves permission. What I like to do is I like to connect with a few people and say, hey, if I call for somebody to just raise their hand and say something, will you be the first one? And I think just inviting people, giving them a role at the gathering gives them a sense of purpose. Can you be the host of the person that kind of greets people when they look like they're standing off alone? Or can you be the person who greets people when they first come in so that their entry is this warm and welcoming thing? Everybody wants to be part of something. And I think if we co-create it, we're able to achieve really cool things. But if it's just all about you and it's, you're the only one doing something, it can be really hard to start a movement, right? And get people going. So I think it's about offering an invitation, setting it up ahead of time for success, and modeling what vulnerability looks like, for sure. There's definitely been times where I've invited people to come dance in the streets and public sort of pop-up flash mob style dances. And I created a video to say, hey, this is where we're going to be dancing. And here's me dancing right now as people walk by to show, listen, I know this is weird and kind of awkward and vulnerable, but I'm doing it right now. And I want you to come join me as well. It can be magic.
When you mention roles, it's making me think about how important it can be to have a focus as an attendee. Or oftentimes when someone shows up and is looking around the room and wondering, oh my gosh, what can I do here? Where am I supposed to go? Do I go to the bar first or do I go over here first? And so having a role or a responsibility can be a really great way to curb some anxiety and know where to fit in. In fact, I think it's a powerful thing to do, even if you're going to a house party and you don't, it's some folks you just met, maybe ask the host how you can be helpful. You know, can I go stir this pot, or can I take out the recycling? It looks a little full or something. But just having some role or thing to do can be really helpful to calm the mind and the nerves. So I thought that was interesting you brought that up. Does that show up a lot in how you think about shaping these experiences?
Absolutely. I think to resonate with that, I think as kind people, we reach out to the host and say, what can I bring? Right? Ice, bottle of wine, whatever it is. But then once we get to the party, we forget that we can still support the gathering and support the intention of the gathering. And so it's nice. I think about this often when I'm designing experiences. I used to be the type of experience designer who design in the background and not be in the forefront. So I wouldn't give a public speech or anything.
Hmm.
I would just design it and then let the audience kind of take over. And I think about that with people who love to do photography and videography. They love to be behind the lens. They don't want to be the subject of the experience. They want to be behind curating. But how can we encourage everybody to have a role? Yeah, when you get to the party, hey, can you make sure that the cups, everybody has a drink, or everybody's having fun, or there's and each part of the household has a different vibe, right? The kitchen has like that big party vibe where all the things happen, whereas the couch, the living room, maybe more chill, the backyard. So there could be zones. I don't know. What do you think? There could be zones for creating some rules for people as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We always talk about pop-up rules and, temporary spaces that we might be designing for or supporting. And I like this idea of zones. You could have different rules or different expectations, different criteria, different games in the different zones for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it kind of naturally happens when you're talking about a house party, right? Because of the nature of the space. And also I think kitchens just have that quality to them. When people are in a party, they're magnetic.
Yeah. Yeah. They're standing, they're energized. Usually the shots are there.
Right? There's that.
Yeah. There's all the factors that come into play. Yeah. Interesting. Maybe at a public event where you're at a conference or a networking thing, they create zones and each zone has its own vibe, the breakout sessions, the seminars, the main room, the da-da-da. And so, yeah, creating experiences specifically for those zones. I think we're onto something here.
Yeah. Space and how you allocate space and bring folks up, how you decorate it, how you set up furniture, all those things can be subtle cues into how we want people to engage with the space or what the rules are.
I think one thing that we tend to miss as adults is playfulness. We always think we have to show up in this sort of polished way. And it doesn't have to be completely refined and polished. It can be playful. It can be a banter, an exchange. I think that as adults, we start to lose our sense of play. NASA conducted a study and they concluded that 98% of children are born creative geniuses. 98%. And then they did a study later on in life. They said as adults, only 2% still qualify. And I think that's because we unlearn play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it gets taught out of us in a way, this idea that school is about having the correct answer, but we get kind of built and programmed to do well on the test.
Yeah.
And to, fall in line and, be a good student and all these things.
Yeah.
There's a really great book called Orbiting the Giant Hairball that talks about this. And there's a really amazing section where the author is, I guess one of the things he would do in his spare time, he was a creative director at Hallmark. And so you can imagine the whimsy and creativeness that had to flow through him. And one of the things he would do is visit children at elementary schools and bring metal sculptures and try to wow them and talk to them about art and to follow their passion for art. He had this interesting little experiment he would run where he would ask the students, which of them were artists. And he's like, the kindergartens all raise their hands, but then you get up to the 4th, 5th graders and no one's raising their hand. And he's like, and he would ask the students, what's happening here? Are all the artists moving away?
Yeah, it's amazing how we unlearn that for sure. Kids, you can give them a simple drawing, right? And they'll come up with 10 different things that it is. And as adults, we look at it and we're like, that's like this one thing and only this one thing. But yeah, I want to encourage and invite everybody to create playlists. And I'm not talking about music playlists, but a playlist, a list of things that bring you joy. You know, Dr. Stuart Brown of the National Play Institute says that the opposite of play is not work, it's depression. And I think that we have the opportunity to become more playful and give ourselves the opportunity to take play breaks, even at work. You know, some things that are on my playlist are dancing, midday dance parties. I work remote. And so just turning off the camera, doing and then just turn on some music and just moving the body a little bit. It can be so rejuvenating, you know, going for a skip down the street, coloring, it's something that your mind just gets focused into something that's so simple. Telling dad jokes, as the one I sent you this morning. I hope it made you laugh.
Oh yeah.
Or at least you roll
I'm a
your
big
eyes.
fan of dad jokes. Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of dad jokes. So I'm definitely one to carry those around and share them, much to my wife's chagrin.
I feel like there's two spectrums, right? There's the rolling on the floor laughing, and then there's the eye roll and everything in between. And everyone knows where they kind of fall, especially when it comes to dad jokes. But no matter what, as long as I can get a response out of somebody, I think that's a win.
Yeah, that's a useful tool.
Yeah, 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 for sure. So I think there's 4 rules around a playlist that I want to talk about. The first rule of playlists and play is make sure that you lose track of time. If you're losing track of time, then you're playing, you're doing it right. If you lose track of time, you're totally immersed in the experience. That's great play. The second is don't have a goal or an outcome. Just enjoy the experience. When I'm coloring, it's not about finishing the project. It's about just coloring and just doing whatever comes to me or calls to me. Being the emotional side, being light or silly or energized, right? Having the emotion attached to it. And then the fourth thing is allowing yourself to be curious and self-expressive. I think those are 4 great elements of play that I want to invite everybody to engage in more.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. The lack of outcome, I think, is one that many people might struggle with letting go of.
That need for results or perfection or
yeah, perfection's certainly a thing. I was thinking more in the lines of there has to be a reason why I'm gonna do this thing, right? It's like it seems like a very societal way of behaving or way of being, right? That we have these objectives, this thing we have to accomplish. So I can imagine that being difficult, at least in my observations of how folks think about meetings, how they think about the way they spend their time.
Yeah, for sure. When you ask someone that you don't know if they want to play rock, paper, scissors, I tend to get a few different answers. I get a yes, an enthusiastic yes. I get a no, which is totally fine. And then sometimes I get a, but for what? And they want to know what's the outcome? What's the purpose? Why are we doing this thing? Why, can it just be playful or does it have to be something that is more?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting tapping into what you're saying.
What's your percentages on those 3 answers?
I would say that for what is a big one. Why? For what? What are we doing? Why? Like they want to understand the parameters around it. Yeah, but it also depends on context. As I'll ask people,
where you're at and who you're running into.
Yeah. Are they a complete stranger? Are you at a mingling event or a networking event? Are you at something playful? There's an experience. We partnered with the local transit authority and the city, and we created these joy mobs. So a mob of people spreading joy, and we brought entertainment onto the train cars, and the train doors open, and a big loud of laughter just erupts from the train car. And when people first hop on, they're like, "What's happening here?" And they're like, "I don't understand." It's usually like this solo, disconnected kind of ride. I'm just planning to be on my phone, look out the window, put my headphones in. And we were doing this improv comedy thing, and the audience, even for a 2-minute ride, short little skits, we were getting audience suggestions, and they were participating and laughing and making eye contact with each other. And it was this beautiful experience of connecting versus what you pre-programmed your mind to think that the ride is going to be, and then being delightfully surprised. And the facial expressions of people when they hop on the train, they're like, what is happening here? You know?
Was that the first Joy Mob that you ever did?
The first Joy Mob we ever did was dancing in the streets, and it was a silent disco, and it was a traveling silent disco. So for those who don't know, silent disco, you put music in your headphones. No one can hear the music except unless you have the headphones. So going down the street, we were flash mobbing like farmers markets. They're buying food and groceries, and we're like, woo! And that's all you hear. And everybody's like, people are crazy. But Nietzsche's got...
So you were just walking down the street, just kind of from neighborhood to neighborhood?
Joyfully moving our bodies to music, and we were inspired by the music. We gave them prompts in the headphones too. Give a high five to a stranger, dance as if you were Fred Astaire, jump up onto a park bench or twirl around a light pole.
That's fascinating that you had the prompts in there. In most silent discos I've been aware of, people are listening to music, and oftentimes they're hearing different music. So you've got maybe 5 to 10 different tracks. And so people are dancing to different things, and it's quite unreal to look at because no one's like dancing in the same thing.
Everybody's moving to their own groove, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's fascinating that you introduced the prompts, because then that gave people maybe a little more confidence to go further than they normally would.
Yeah. Again, inviting people into the experience, right? Like, I'm thinking about the 5 E's of experience design. You create excitement in the beginning and really set the tone for what's going to happen. Then in the entry, when people were coming, we were welcoming them with a warm welcome. We did a team building activity. And then we move into the experience. And how do we design the experience so that it's engaging and it's not just, stale? This was pre-COVID that we did this first one, years and years before. And we found that some people came up to the people with headphones and they said, what are you doing? And we said, we're dancing. And they're like, well, can I join in? And so they took out their headphones and either shared their headphones, again, pre-COVID, or they put their phone on speakerphone and just listened with their, the phone next to both of their ears. And they shared a moment of dancing together in this sort of wildly vulnerable state out in the wild, on a street corner, in a park. It was beautiful.
So what was going through your mind right before it first started? Like, this is your first one, the anticipating's building. What were you thinking?
Fear that no one was going to show up. It was a wildly unique ask of the community. I had a goal. I wanted to see if I could unite the city through dance. I put up some posters. Word got out. The media caught wind. They had me on the live morning show. I told them what we were doing. And I said, I'm going to be dancing here. Come join me. And I thought to myself, I didn't even have a business or a Facebook or anything set up. So I was like, well, what if no one comes? Will I still honor the thing that I said I was going to do? Will I still be, the strange guy dancing in the streets? And slowly, one by one, eventually 60 something people showed up, and this beautiful celebration. And at the end, everybody's hugging, getting to know each other. They're asking me, what's next? And that's when I realized, like, oh, there's an opportunity here for more human connection in unique ways than we typically see.
Of those people, how many are you still in touch with? Was this the foundation of building real lasting relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was more connected to the dance community at that time. And there was a lot of wonderful dancers. We met at Ecstatic Dance and would have a beautiful time together. I think that in the law of diffusion of innovation, it's a bell curve. In the beginning, to start a movement, you need the innovators and the early adopters. So basically what that means is you need someone that's willing to go first. And then you need the people who will back that up and be like, okay, I'm in, sign me up. I don't want to be the first one, but since there's a movement, since you're dancing in the streets, since you're singing on trains, since you're writing love letters and leaving them in public for people to find and brighten up their day, I want to join in. And so we had that group right off the bat. It just started building and building and building. And then we reached a tipping point to start reaching some more of the majority, the early and late majority of the people in the bell curve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I know that through the Joy Mob events, you started to transition into working with companies. So I was curious, like, How do you translate the spontaneity of these kind of in-person joy experiences into more structured facilitation work, especially in these more buttoned up situations like corporate teams?
Sure. Yeah, it was a challenging transition to move from public activations into the corporate space. I hadn't worked in corporate spaces before. One big factor, I think, was actually taking voltage controls certification course because we did a project. And in that project, I started to identify exactly what kind of facilitator I was, what kind of outcomes I wanted to have, how did I actually create these experiences? And I started using those building blocks to create them in the workplace. And I think the biggest thing that helped me leap was giving myself permission. We don't give ourselves permission enough to explore, to be brave, to create. I was terrified to go into the corporate space. And slowly but surely, I started doing these little activations with them. Let's do a team building thing here. Let's do a team building thing there. And I came in with the mindset of, instead of it being about me, I made it about them. And I was like, how can I serve the needs that are needed for this environment? So when I talked to the HR teams, the sales leader, the sales teams, the team leaders, we're disconnected. We're not communicating well. So I designed an experience for that. And it started to propel, and it led me down some very beautiful paths. And you're right, teams can be buttoned up. And I come in with the energy of having them see me be vulnerable. So if I'm going to invite them into an experience, I'm going to share something about my experience first, just to kind of model that. And like I said, if I know some people in the audience already, or if I know some people on the team, I'll invite them behind the scenes to share as well, so that someone needs to go first. And through that, we can create some really cool things together, especially in a buttoned up environment.
Yeah. What's that journey that helps them kind of move step by step and get more comfortable and more vulnerable and more open? And what are folks ready for at that point, right? Because I think sometimes if folks aren't ready to step in, how do we create that threshold that makes it easier for them to do so?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can be awkward, right? Especially, I think when people hear team building, they think of the old school style with the trust falls and sort of the forced fun. And we talked about this already. That team building it's needed because you need to support culture. It's not just about productivity. When you have a positive culture, it leads to productivity. When you have a culture of psychological safety and belonging, I envision a world where belonging is considered a metric and measured as a metric in productivity, so that we make sure that there's space for it. And yeah, if you create a psychologically safe space, people start to move into it. It takes a minute, but they start to ramp up.
Yeah, and it can be transformative. So, what were some of the most powerful shifts you've witnessed in others during or after one of your sessions? Anything that's given you goosebumps?
I think when people come up to me afterwards and they tell me I needed that, and they have this sort of expression on their face, like, I really needed that. There's a
Mm,
moment in every experience that gets designed, especially if it gets designed intentionally, where you have feedback, whether it's the executive leader who was dancing with his daughter and shares that experience, or I think teams have the ability to really be productive when they feel psychologically safe and have a foundation of trust and connection. And I think that's what really resonates with me when they come up to me afterwards and communicate that they felt safe enough to be vulnerable. Like I said before, connection moves at the speed of vulnerability. So it's exciting. It's exciting.
You talked a lot about your TED Talk, and I know that you were really excited about it, and it was kind of a big moment for you and took a lot of work. And so I was curious, when you were in that work or even reflecting on it later, what did preparing for it kind of help you understand about your work?
You mentioned some great books and movies. There's one that I'm reading right now called Chop Wood, Carry Water. Have you read it or heard of it?
Yes.
There's some really great lessons in there where they talk about everything matters. The details matter. The little things matter. So when we were getting coached on our body language and the way we move on stage, the way we take applause or receive applause, the way we speak to the audience, which areas of the audience are we speaking to? The balcony, the lower level, the left, the right. There was so much details. And the whole time I was thinking to myself, I'm just trying to memorize my lines, man. Like I'm just trying to memorize my lines and not mess this up. Um, but when you focus on the details and you give yourself enough time, I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned. Giving myself enough time, giving myself permission to fail in the practice enough times that when I got on stage, it was like second nature. It just felt comfortable. At one point, the audience was laughing at something I said, and then I actually started laughing because they were laughing. And in my head, I thought, how playful is this? But I was also thinking to myself, is this allowed? Am I allowed to be human and laugh with the audience instead of just like, I'm here to deliver a talk? So it was a really cool experience. And I think that for anybody who's willing to be brave enough to do some public speaking or take the plunge, I say, give yourself enough time to fail enough times in practice so that when you're in front of everybody, you're just there to have fun and it's just relaxed and playful.
I love that. We're big proponents of practice, as you know, with all the community events focused on practice, and really encouraging people to spend the time when the stakes are low so that when we're called on, we have the confidence to step into those high stakes moments.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of the facilitation labs and the practice labs that Voltage Control does because of that opportunity. Yeah. And the ability to fail and continue forward. As you know, Chris and I were co-presidents of a global speaker series that celebrated failure. And we'd have speakers go on stage and share their stories of professional failure and the lessons learned. And it was really interesting as facilitators of that experience to see, oh, here's some areas where we needed to grow and weren't excelling as creators of this experience. And here's some areas where we were growing. And the next time we did it even better, and life's about practice. Jump in with both feet and see what happens. It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I was even recalling you mentioning wanting to help others find their facilitator voice. So what advice do you have to give someone who feels the pull toward facilitation but isn't sure where to start?
I think about this little acronym CBA. First, I think getting clarity on exactly what you want. As a facilitator, it can be hard to know exactly where you want to go, but just get clarity on something small. I want to do this, I want to do that. And then remove the limiting beliefs that you have around it. And the best way to do that is to practice. Best way to do that is to be around other people who you can fail in front of and feel psychologically safe. And then finally, the A is action. Take action. The more you just sit and think about it, the harder it's going to be to move forward. And sometimes that clarity, sometimes you need to take action and then you get clarity, So just take action, take baby steps, move forward. For me, I didn't know how to move into the corporate space. So I took the voltage control certification, and it gave me the stepping stone. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I was in a safe environment. I was in a cohort of people that some of them were in the corporate speak world and some of them weren't in the corporate world. And I was like, oh, there are other people like me that that I can connect with and feel this camaraderie with. So take action, get clear on what you want, even if it's just baby steps. You don't have to have the big end goal in mind. And most of all, remove the limiting beliefs that you have and give yourself permission to just explore.
And this might be a similar answer, but I'm curious if we now zoom out a little bit, because we were talking specifically about facilitation and facilitation skills. But if we then more broadly look at communities and your mission of helping spread joy and connection as a part of daily life, like what's one step people might take to move closer to your vision, that they're realizing your dream of communities that have joy and connection? What's something that folks might do to have a little more of that? Is it about the playlist, or are there other things that folks might consider?
The playlist is great for your mental health. Everyone should make a playlist. What I would say is think about the dance floor analogy. Think about the first person who needs to go. And like we said before, whether it's bridging connection with somebody, Maybe it's a colleague, you're a remote worker and you're onboarded and you've got a few Zoom one-on-ones. And then what's the rest of the time? You're left to kind of connect, reach out and throw them a dad joke and start building a relationship. Most people don't reach out because the other person didn't reach out. And so if you just hop on the dance floor, get a little bit of bravery, a little bit of courage, some really amazing things happen, you know? And when you send that dad joke to a colleague who's working remotely as well, I think about 40% of the time I get a response back. I get the laughing emoji and then I needed that. I needed that because everybody's having a challenging day. It works hard, you know, life's hard. So just reach out, bridge the gap, be the first one to get on that dance floor of life. And people will join you because everybody is craving connection. We're in the middle of the loneliness epidemic, according to the World Health Organization. And we're more connected than ever before through technology. And yet there's this disconnection that we all have and we all feel. So be the first or gather up a group of people together and be the first together, but take action.
Love that. And I want to wrap here with an opportunity for you to leave our listeners with a final thought.
I think that was it. The one I gave you. I think that was it. Be the first one on the dance floor. You know, I imagine a world where loneliness is optional. And I'll let that sink in because I don't know too many people who would choose that option. But when we have enough human connection in the world that loneliness would be optional, that would be a very beautiful world to live in. So I think be the first one on the dance floor. Go first. Reach out. Connect with that person you haven't connected with yet, whether it's a cousin or a friend that you haven't talked to in a while, or a parent. Or if you're a remote worker, reach out to your colleagues and just put yourself out there. Be the first one on the dance floor. I guarantee you someone will join you and you'll start to create a movement of connection that's really beautiful.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Baha ha 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 ha. And thanks so much for joining me.
Childhood trauma coming back. Oh, man. It's been so great talking to you, Douglas. Thanks for spreading joy in the world and creating opportunities for people to connect, whether it's through the Facilitation Labs and the ability to experience what a supportive environment looks like, or through the regional meetups that you're supporting right now. I hope one gets started in Salt Lake City, where I'm at, or just your playful nature. We've worked together with some clients on a few different occasions, and I just love the way you show up. Joking, playful, jovial. You allow people to see who you are. And I think that's really cool.
Well, thank you for that. And Baha, you're always a pleasure. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, Douglas.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Facilitation Lab podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a review and be sure to subscribe and receive updates when new episodes are released. We love listener tales and invite you to share your facilitation stories. Send them to us on LinkedIn or via email. If you want to know more, head over to our blog, where I post weekly articles and resources about facilitation, team dynamics, and collaboration. voltagecontrol.com.